A lot of times the clients are so gung-ho to build their businesses and they're like, hey, I gotta do this. But I ask our clients to back up a little bit. Let's look at this. Is there a way that you can, become more efficient first? Because a lot of newer businesses are not efficient at all. What can you do to be more efficient? How can we address your systems first before you go into hiring, especially if you can't afford it?
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a good one. Our guest is a CPA, fractional CFO, and founder of Fix-It Accounting, Nancy Benet. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Michael. I'm so happy to be here.
It's great to have you. And as we usually start out, perhaps you can let us know a little bit about you, your career journey, and how you ended up doing what you're doing today.
Okay. It pretty much goes way back. My parents were very poor. So, of course, they were scraping every penny, but they had this friend that was a CPA, and he and his family had this really nice life. And so that's what I wanted. I didn't know what a CPA was. I had no idea. And I decided when I was very young that I wanted to be a CPA. So I did all the things that you do when you have a goal like that. So you get good grades, go to school, so you can go to college and get a good job and then open a business of your own. Because I was always very entrepreneurial. But the problem was all that went really well until I got to the good job part. And I don't know. I hated it. Had a lot of aptitude for accounting and tax, but I just hated the job. I hated sitting alone in a cubicle all day long every day with highly technical work and somebody else feeding me stuff that they thought was important. So I jumped ship from that after a couple of years and I got my CPA license. I left the CPA firm and I went to work for a client as the corporate controller. And I thought, surely this would be better. But it wasn't. It was even worse. So I gave up my entire, this is youthful impulsiveness. I gave up my entire pre-planned career goals in favor of being a stay-at-home mom and starting another business, a different kind of business with my husband. Fast forward, I failed a lot. We had 5 failed businesses. And I woke up when I was 45 years old and I had 4 small children, no job, no income, $100 a week in child support, and $650,000 in debt from the 5 failed businesses. Wow. And at that moment, I was thrown back into the accounting and tax world because I didn't know what else to do. So I got a job and I said, I'm just going to make this job thing work, even though I'm not really a good employee. I mean, I can do the work. I just don't like that. So I did that, but then my company moved all the accounting functions to Colorado. I live in Florida. So I was really kind of stuck. It was the recession and there were no jobs to fall back on. So a contact from church introduced me to an elderly gentleman who had this very small tax prep firm and he wanted to sell. He wanted to retire. So we went under contract for that. And I thought, well, I'm really bad at this business thing, but I don't have any other choices, so I'm going to do this. And so I was really getting excited about doing it. I thought, well, maybe I can do this. I've forgotten all my skills, but I can put it together. I'll be okay as long as I've got some clients. So then I go out and I sign a 3-year lease on a building. And the day after I signed the lease, he backed out and gave the business to his daughter.
Wow.
So it just forced me to get really creative. And I'm actually so thankful that happened because as working with him, I figured out pretty quickly that his clients expected him to cheat the IRS for them. And I wasn't willing to do that. And so ultimately, all of those clients would have left anyway. So it really was this incredibly fortunate event for me Didn't seem like it at the time, but incredibly fortunate event. And since then, I just made this decision. I'm going to go all in and I'm going to make this new CPA, well, it wasn't a CPA firm at the time, but I'm going to make this new accounting firm work. And I built the whole thing. We started with IRS problem resolution and marketing to people who had federal tax liens filed in the state of Florida. That went great until it didn't, because then hurricanes would shut down the IRS in the state. They wouldn't file any more liens and our revenue would dry up. Then, we did some different iterations, but ended up with a lot of bookkeeping clients, because that is recurring revenue. And it is the best business model for somebody like us, because it just keeps coming. It's not so heavy in tax season. I mean, we have heavy tax season. We do a ton of tax too. But that recurring revenue keeps us going month after month after month after month. And I love it so much. And I think it's like a really great business model for anybody, not just a CPA, for anybody that has aptitude for accounting.
Yeah, wow. What a journey. Some big lessons along the way, and I guess it's you can look at your own financial decisions and as well the ones that your clients are making. But what are some of those decisions that you've seen yourself make and other business owners make that make growth problems later on?
One of the biggest things that I see is robbing the business of cash. Business cash flow is the lifeblood of any business, and owners tend to, and it was me too, because I was desperate to have money to live on, even though we lived really low. You take it out, and I think it's really a problem, because that is what leads to problems later on. You just don't realize, and you get a loan to be able to fund your personal lifestyle and all these things. But those are really big red flags I see when a client comes in. And even when, they've been in a while and they start doing this because they started making this much money every month and this much. And now I can buy a big house, which is a giant obligation every month that doesn't end and you can't easily get out of it. Or an expensive car, or I'm taking expensive vacations, or I'm hiring my wife and my mother and my stepfather and paying them big salary. And the money just leaks out and they're left standing there going, oh my God, what happened?
And so what is the alternative, do you think, for them? What advice do you give?
I advise business owners, particularly in the early years of their businesses, to live below their means. If you have to keep your day job when you're starting, please do that, because you don't want that kind of pressure on you to have to generate cash to fund a big lifestyle. It just puts too much pressure on the business and too much pressure on the owner, and there's a lot of stress involved. So my biggest thing is live below your means. Leave money in the business. You need at least 3 to 6 months of expenses, business expenses, in your bank account. Because what if something happens, which it does all the time? Things happen. For us here in Florida, it's hurricanes. It'll shut you down for months. Or before, it was the IRS shutting down. We didn't have cash to manage that. And I think it's a really big problem. And business owners don't really realize how much of a huge impact that can make, or even shut them down.
Now, you went through a lot of this. You said you had like $600,000 in debt, some failed businesses. Looking back on all of that, how did you get out of that? I'd love to hear the closed loop on that, as well as, the lessons. How has it helped you with your clients today?
Well, how I got out of it is that I finally opened my mouth and told somebody. There's a lot of shame, especially with financial professionals, about not being able to handle your finances properly. And so it was a very well-kept secret. But opening my mouth and talking to somebody set me free. It helped me to see that it's not as big of a deal as we would have thought. I actually had to tell somebody I had a lot of respect for. She was a real estate attorney, and I had been sued by a mortgage company on a property that I didn't even own. And I had to go to her, and I had to lay it on the table and go, look, here's where I am. And she helped me resolve the first thing. And so then after that, it was just baby steps. But opening my mouth and talking about it was the first step, because people are willing to help you if you tell them where you are. But if you hide it, it becomes so shameful, and nobody really can know where you are to be able to help you.
Absolutely. And probably a gift that you met that person that helped you open up. And I would imagine it was tough on your family, your husband, you were in these businesses together, you have family, children going through all of this. What were some of the learnings and impacts of all of that?
Well, the children do not remember any of this, which I call that a huge win. They didn't experience that fear, the financial fear. My husband and I did end up divorced. But there were a lot of other things besides the financial thing. So that was a happy time. Got divorced, started new, rebuilt, and I've got a very happy life now. So, but the fact that the children were impacted so greatly is a huge, big blessing in my mind. They actually now are all thriving. Well, let's see, three of them have businesses of the four. The one has a job, but he also owns property, and they're all thriving. I can't say anything bad happened to them from that. So I'm very thankful.
Maybe they got some of the learnings of the opposite through the experience.
Yeah, actually, three of them have worked for me in the CPA firm, just with the specific intention of learning business skills. And so from that, they all three have started or bought businesses.
Very cool. That's exciting. Well, good for them. And yeah, it was quite a hole for you to dig yourself out of. But that's what shapes people, right?
You can do anything if you take baby steps. Expecting it to all evaporate overnight is unrealistic. It took me decades to get there. So it did take a long time to get out. I'm thinking like 8 years, maybe 7 or 8 years to really kind of work through all of it. But I did it with baby steps. I didn't feel like I had to undo all of that all at once. And I think that's a big part of it. It relieved the pressure. I couldn't deal with it and raising the children and building a business. I couldn't. So I just had to put it aside. And when you can set something aside and go, I am not worrying about that. It'll have to, kind of resolve itself over time, and then take the baby steps as they come up to resolve it, I think is the best way.
Nice. That's great. Good advice. These are some questions that I would say lean into your work as a CFO and your experiences going and living these yourself. I'm sure that gives you a lot of empathy for your clients.
Yeah.
But if we're talking to our bookkeeping listener and really around their clients and being able to see, what's going on in our client's business and being able to see flags or warnings, and then how do you actually bring those up and give them direction? And this one would be related to warning signs that a client is hiring before they're financially ready, because that's what in the same tier of what you talked about, living beyond their means in their personal life. Well, maybe they're living beyond their means in their business and saying, look, let's hire staff, and they're not financially ready. How do you deal with something like that?
Yeah. I think you have to be really clear with them. You don't have enough cash to do this. You need cash in the bank to be able to hire somebody that you don't have necessarily enough revenue to cover, because that's going to eat into your income, right? You are going to have to do without to hire this person. And maybe it's a strategic decision, but that strategic decision has to be met with cash. You've got to be able to support that. So I think that's a really big, hard conversation to have with a client, because a lot of times the clients are so gung-ho to build their businesses, and they're like, hey, I got to do this. But I ask our clients to back up a little bit. Let's look at this. Is there a way that you can, become more efficient first? Because a lot of newer businesses are not efficient at all. What can you do to be more efficient? How can we address your systems first before you go into hiring, especially if you can't afford it?
Yeah, it sounds like it's because it would be tough. So it's business owner, they want to grow, hiring staff. People think, more people make things better. And so, but at the same time, it could be, are they ready for that conversation? And how do you deal with that? Because doing the books, getting their financials prepared, doing the compliance work, that's one lane. Helping them understand it, helping them make different decisions, that's another lane. Do you find that sometimes you could bump out of the lane and they'd be like, hey, why are you in this other lane here?
What I find is that if you're going to help someone make strategic decisions that way, they have to be open to it. They have to be open to listening to you. And a lot of times they aren't. And there's really, as bookkeepers, there's not always a lot we can do about that. We can try. We can do our best. Hey, can we talk about this? Just nicely. I see that there could be problems down the road from this decision. Like, would you be open to a discussion about it? But a lot of times they're just not. And you have to back up and go, okay, well, I'm trying to help you, and you don't say that to them, but to yourself, I'm trying to help you, but you're not willing to listen. So sometimes we just have to let that go. We can't control other people and force them to do what we think. And that's a big, hard thing when you're dealing with somebody's finances and see some big red flags. It is so hard. But I've experienced that so many times, I can't tell you. And you try to talk to them and they go, no, I've got to do this, or they just won't listen.
Okay. And then when it comes to the hiring, there's the obvious, right? You're going to have to pay them a salary, but there's other costs. What are the hidden costs that many don't actually account for in their decision making?
Yeah, there's lots of things that go into that. You're going to look at benefits. I mean, not health insurance necessarily, because I find that most small business owners do not offer that. And if they do, it kind of kicks their people out of any subsidies that are available in the healthcare marketplace. But they're going to have to think about, what other benefits are you going to offer? For us, we're looking at holiday pay, vacation pay, affluent benefits. Just there's all these other things. And then absenteeism. A lot of people, I don't know, sometimes they don't want to work. And so they'll fudge things. And so you're just dealing with that. And then if somebody's doing stuff wrong, you have to go behind and fix it. So it's double work, even triple, because sometimes fixing a problem is harder than doing it right the first time. So, you can get into all kinds of things. And if people say that their skill set is this, and really, generally, they don't meet that. Sometimes, but a lot of times they just don't. So when looking at hiring, I would definitely do some testing. And there's resources available for that through CareerSource, which is a free service to business owners. I refer clients to CareerSource all the time for hiring because they have all these tests that they can do for potential new employees. And so you're kind of a little bit more aware of what you're getting.
Right. So making sure they make the right decision, doing some testing and evaluating beforehand.
Yes, because training too, just the training is so expensive. It takes, for example here, to bring in a new person, it takes probably a full year to get them up to speed and trained, even if they've got a ton of experience, because they're now learning our systems and how to deal with our people and our clients. And, you have to go through that whole cycle to be able to really understand the whole process, all the way from tax prep, bookkeeping, tax prep, all the way to tax planning, and then start over again. And once you get through that whole cycle with the clients, there's more comfort level there. But it does take a long time to train people. And so don't underestimate that.
Okay. Now, your story is, and just to jump back a little bit, you were going to buy a business, which you said, hey, great that didn't happen because the clients weren't great, which is I think a little bit of a nugget there in saying, even though a business has revenue and they have clients, doesn't necessarily mean that they're good customers, that they're customers that are going to fit in your model. So it's that due diligence that's really important when you're looking at acquiring a business. In your case, it was an accounting and bookkeeping business. But then you were left with this lease on this building. Did you get rid of the lease? What happened then?
No, I it was the recession, so I didn't really have any place else to go. So I just decided that I was going to make this work. I just made this decision, and we tried a couple of different things. And I talked to the landlord. I said, look, here's what happened. Can you work with me a little bit? And he did. And he was really sweet. He was my landlord for probably like 8 years. He was amazing human being. And he really did help me a lot. But I just had to open my mouth again and say, this is what's going on. Here's what I'm doing. I really want to make this work. So would you work with me? And that was a little bit relieved. But I paid all my lease money, the whole thing. And he never forgave any of that. I was able to catch that up and help that. But that was because I hustled. That was because I did the things that you have to do. I didn't go, oh, poor me. I think that was probably the moment in my life when I stopped being a victim and I started taking responsibility. I could have blamed everybody else in my life for where I was. My ex-husband, my mother, my children, whoever. I could have blamed the whole world. But at that moment, I stood up and I said, you know what? Every decision I have made in my life has led to this moment, this situation where I am. And I have to own that. I have to take responsibility. And I think that's magical, because when you realize that you can take responsibility for what has happened to you, it also helps you realize that you have power over what comes next. Because every decision I made led there. What if I made better decisions and it led somewhere else that's way better? And so it gave me so much power and confidence and ability, just knowing that I could do that. And I did. I just was like, I'm not going to let anything stop me. I kept going forward. I kept taking my baby steps. I just moved and moved and moved. And opportunities came that I couldn't have manifested. I couldn't have worked out on my own if I was trying to figure it out. Just all these resources came to me. And I think a lot of that was because of that very intentional decision and because I took responsibility.
That's a tough one for people to get, a lot of people to get, the responsibility, the victim. And how did you discover that? How did you get there? Because that's a big one. It doesn't feel good. It's tough to eat your own words, or, and say, look, I am the problem here, or my choices are not that you are the problem, but your choices that you made or decisions you made those decisions. You're the one who made them. So you're responsible.
Yeah.
That's tough.
That's a hard place to be, but at the same time, it's liberating. Because I was at rock bottom and there's no place to go but up. So I just said, okay, I'm taking responsibility. Yeah, I suck at business, and I just I've not handled my life properly, but I'm going to do better going forward. And that I knew that I could do better going forward. And I think that's the biggest thing. Becoming aware of that fact that I was the problem and knowing that I had capacity to make better choices.
Wow. And so that's pretty cool. And I think it's, hopefully our listener can glean from that and take that into their own life or help others get through it. I mean, it's tough to help other people get that they're not being responsible for their life, but you did. Then what happened? So what were some of the things that you had to hustle to do to grow your business?
Yeah, we had to figure out how to get clients, because I live in a really small town, and going to the chamber meetings and trying to lure clients from other accounts did not seem palatable at all. So I started with the idea that online was coming about then. It was 2010, I guess, and it was not really any CPA firms that I knew of did any online marketing, but I thought, I'm going to do that. But that takes kind of a long time to build. And so while I was doing that, I also was trying to figure out what else would bring me money. And the one thing that landed was the IRS, the letters that we sent. They looked like little wedding invitations to people who had IRS tax liens filed in the state of Florida. It's public record here. We were able to look it up every day. We got the letters out the door every day. And that was so successful. And we started in our county, and necessity is the mother of invention. I didn't have any way else to get clients. And so I had to really think outside the box. And that was a great thing that we did because it taught us so much that we could not have learned any other way. When you're dealing with the IRS all day, every day, for somebody's problems, trying to get them out of a pickle, mind you, everybody had failed businesses, foreclosed houses, all these problems, financial problems that led to these IRS tax liens. It wasn't Joe Blow who was just trying to screw the IRS. It was legitimately a hard time for people. And they would call me crying. And this worked so well. And I gained so much compassion. And I already had that because I didn't have a tax lien, but I had so much financial problems that I really had compassion for these people that were coming. And we learned so much working with the IRS for our clients. You can't buy that kind of knowledge that we have today. And one of the people that went through that period with me, all she did was IRS problem resolution. She's still with me 13 years later. And we just have so much knowledge about how to help our clients now because of that. So that was the first thing. And then over time, we've built our online presence. We started asking clients for Google reviews. Nobody else was doing that. Nobody. It seemed like over the top crazy for a CPA firm because, CPA firms are kind of stuffy and uppity and wouldn't dare do something like that. But we didn't care. We just went and did the things that we do. And that has led to incredible online search engine optimization. We do run Google ads and we get our phone rings off the hook because we have so many positive Google reviews. We have such good search engine optimization. We've discontinued doing the IRS lien filing because the clients have changed so much. Used to be people who had their house foreclosed and they lost their businesses and all that. Now a lot of them are just, I didn't want to pay or whatever. They spent all the money. So we stopped doing that and have really leaned into the monthly service and the CFO type work because I don't want to be heavy tax season. H&R Block can do that. But the phone rings off the hook. It's just, I think what we chose to do way back when really paid off. And if any of your listeners are going to do that, know that it takes time, but it's totally doable. Totally doable.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really interesting journey. Looking now, you're pivoting a little bit towards the recurring business, bookkeeping work. What else do you see for the future?
Well, I think AI has impacted our industry quite a bit. I don't know what will happen with that. I think a lot of people are reluctant to adopt it. So we're going to continue to have a lot of business, going forward. But also with that, AI can't replace us as advisors. So I think building that advisory service, whether you're a CPA or not, is really important. I think that, offering that value and helping your clients build their businesses, the ones that want you to help, not all of them will. But I think it's so valuable for the client. And it's one of my most fun things that I get to do because I love to see business owners succeed. I love to help that. I love to be in on that conversation. And what got me started with that is that we had one client who's really been a client for many, many years, but the former client sold the business. This new one bought it, and he had an SBA loan on it. So he calls me one day and he says, "Hey, Nancy, I've got this SBA loan, and it's just, I'm not used to having debt. I don't like it. I want to pay it off, but I need some guidance because I need this other piece of equipment. And can you help me work my way through it?" So we had like a 10, 15-minute discussion. We talked about what paying off the loan would save and what buying the equipment would make. And it was such a huge difference. Say, paying off the loan would save him tens of thousands of dollars. Buying the piece of equipment would make him millions of dollars. So he did. He actually bought 2 large pieces of equipment. And the very next year, he was able to increase his net income by $600,000 because of that purchase. And the machinery did not even cost that much. And he gets to use that machinery day in, day out, year in, year out for the next 20 years. So that was so rewarding for me and for him that I was just like, we got to do more of this. I love it.
Wow, it's amazing. And very valuable to be able to do that for someone. So now, if you were having to go today and find clients, you're brand new, you want to build your business, what would you do today?
Today, I probably would go to some networking meetings and do it that way. I'm not much for networking meetings. I don't like it very much. But if I didn't have any clients, I would go do that. But while I was doing that, I would build my online presence, because online, I don't know. It seems to me that it's so easy to get clients online after you build this SEO. Of course, that takes time, it takes money, it takes all the things, but it's doable. And I would do that at the same time I was going to networking meetings, meeting people. But when you go to networking meetings, you don't want to come across as salesy. You're not trying to sell anybody anything. You're just showing up and making friends. And eventually they start going, hey, you know what? I got this question. Can you answer my question? I give free advice all day, all the time. So I'll answer the question. And then eventually they're calling you and going, hey, can I make an appointment? Hey, would you do my tax return? Hey, would you help me with my bookkeeping? So I think that it's a little bit of a progress. And I think, too, people are looking to get clients. Bookkeepers want them to sign up for service. I was just talking to somebody else the other day about this. Want them to sign up for service. But what I find is that when you have a client that's coming in, they don't want to sign any sort of long-term thing. They don't want to obligate themselves. So what we do with them is a project. We look at their QuickBooks file or whatever accounting file they have. We figure out what it's going to take to clean it up, and we price them on that. Okay, here's what we see. We give them all the information. Because they can't do it themselves. Here's what we see. Here's what it's going to take as far as money to clean that up. And generally, they'll sign up for that. And once you get them signed up for that and get them through that process, they see, oh, she's great to work with. So then they'll sign up for a service package.
Wow, very cool. And when it comes to AI, what are you adopting?
I'm still working on that, but one of the things we do with our clients is put their information minus their identifying information into our AI. That is private. We do not allow it to use our information to train the AI. We put it in there and ask it for an analysis, like putting this year versus last year and every month. And it creates this long analysis. I don't want all that. The client can't comprehend that. And so what I ask it then is to make a list of 3 bullet points, just 3. It's all they can take, and send them that information with the reports. And then I say, do you want to make an appointment? We can go deeper into your goals. What do you want from your business? What are you looking for? What's going to happen in the next year or 2 years or 5 years? We start talking about those things, and then we can help them better, more effectively.
Lovely. Yeah, it's evolving, and I always like to hear how people are adopting it. I mean, everyone's different and embracing it differently, and so it will be interesting to see how our guests and our listeners are using the new technology as it rolls out.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
I think AI is great. I really appreciate having that resource, because it knows, it's got a much wider and deeper knowledge level than we do.
Absolutely transformational to being able to crunch big pieces of information and help make sense of it and lead and give you clues as to what's next. It would just be impossible to do that without it. And so it's opening up all sorts of opportunities in our industry, but everywhere, whether it's solving the problems of our environment or, our communities, healthcare. It's exciting times. Exciting times. So, well, this has been fantastic. What a journey you've been on. And I want to thank you on behalf of our listeners for coming on and sharing your journey and some of your gold nuggets of experience and wisdom with us today.
Well, thanks for having me. It's always great fun.
The pleasure has been all ours. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.